rien n'est jamais définitivement acquis. We invite all entrepreneurial support organizations or startup enablers working with circular and green businesses and startups to apply for Green Up to Scale Up. Strengthen your capacities as support organizations through the grant and drive the ecosystem forward in supporting more circular and green businesses innovations. And what would be really great is to have a group of actors that would work together to transform a sector. So we have this idea that we need to take part in rebuilding a Philippine economy that works for all people and our planet.
Hey, I'm Al, and this is the Paglalayag podcast. I'm using this podcast to showcase what's going on around me in the hardware and clean tech sectors dito sa Philippines. With guests from across the startup, research, investment, and enabler ecosystems, Paglalayag focuses on the stories and inspirations that motivate us to start up in hardware and press on down this arduous path of steering our economy away from the looming climate catastrophe that makes itself increasingly felt in our lives each passing year. I hope you'll find this cast of characters as impressive and inspiring as I do. Also, if you've been listening to these podcasts and want to let me know what you think, there's a survey form available at paglalayag.net-podcast. You can also reach out by email at pal@paglalayag.net. I'd love to hear from you. Sige, tuloy-tuloy lang. Let's jump in. Okay, so welcome everybody to Paglalayag. I'm Al. And today I'm joined by Ms. Maylis Charlat, project lead of Expertise France, which is the French public agency for international technical cooperation. So today we're going to be talking about the Green Economy Program for the Philippines, and especially their upcoming call for proposals on what they call Green Up to Scale Up. Maylis has a background in international relations, law, humanitarian aid, and economics. She studied public international economic law at La Sorbonne University, Paris, with a special focus on international investment treaty. So, yeah, very looking forward to this.
Thank
you.
Bonjour
and welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Bonjour, Al. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a pretty exciting program coming up. Why don't you start it off? I got tripped up with all the acronyms, so I'm going to have to rely on you to introduce how all the groups fit together.
Thank you, Al. Yeah, I know it's quite a complicated program, so I'm going to try to really summarize it in the most simple way. So basically, EU under the Global Getaway Program launched a 60 million euro funded project in the Philippines to support the government here to transition to a green economy and especially circular economy aspect. So we have a lot of people working on that and trying to support the Philippine government. There is one level on policies national-wise where our colleagues from Germany are supporting DNR to implement more policies in the country to enable the ecosystem. And then UNDP with DILG are working on the LGU level. And us, Expertise France, with our colleagues from GGI and IFC, we are all working with DTI to engage more the private and the financial sectors in the Philippines to also apply circular economy and enhance their involvement in doing so. There is another level which is more on green energy, and this is IFC with the Department of Energy tackling there. So I won't be going too much in detail of all the activities because it's a 5-year program. And so there's a lot of things happening at the same time. But yeah, I'm happy to be with you today and talk about our grants, which may be of interest for your audience.
Yeah, we got lots of entrepreneurs doing all sorts of things that are in climate tech, circular economies, agriculture. You may have heard Orange, she's doing crab farming, and so some of this agricultural or fisheries kind of stuff is potentially got some of that scope. But then, of course, waste. I know that this call, there's a lot of talk about solid waste management, plastic, and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Exactly that kind of initiatives that we are happy to support.
Yeah, cool. Do you want to give a little bit of a background on what you mean when you say circular economy?
Sure, of course. So, circular economy sounds like a big word, but actually, it's kind of a simple thing to understand. Right now, in our society, we are taking resources, making products, and basically we just throw it away, we waste it. As we say in Tagalog, we just tap on. So, the idea behind circular economy is that instead of being a linear economy where we take, make, and waste, instead, we would be doing a circle. So everything we design from the beginning when it comes to a service or a product, we all think about extending the product lifespan as long as possible. So basically, there are 10 R's, we call it like that. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But this is all the R's that are
I think
helping
if I'm
for
going to guess,
circular economy.
recycle, reuse, reduce.
Exactly.
I could guess a couple, but why don't you tell me the rest?
Yeah, exactly. Well, basically from the upstream, so before we consume a product or a service, and you will hear me saying also downstream when it's like the product has been used and then we are on the later part of the consumption of the product. So we can actually already prevent waste from the start. So either we try to prevent waste or either we make sure that our product once consumed can be reutilized and all that. So the 10 R's would be refuse, rethink, and reduce. That would be, for example, refusing waste from start.
I'm not going to use it in the first place.
Well, we actually circular economy for refuse. Basically, you have the plastic straw. You think the plastic straw is the worst, and then you have the paper straw, but you have also like no straw at all, and you just drink from the glass. So that would be, for example, refuse. And then rethink, reduce are more in the design process. And then on the consumption phase, you have other type of R's. We call it reuse, repair, refurnish, remanufacture, and repurpose. So in that case, you have the product done, but you can actually reuse it. So I don't know, a Tupperware that has hard plastic can be reusable, right? Instead of a more soft plastic Tupperware that will be just thrown away and will never be used again. I'm saying plastic Tupperware as like a tricky example, but this is like the mindset for anything that you can actually reuse. And then at the last part, you have recycle and recover. So as we can see in circular economy, recycle is a little bit your last choice. So it's not because you can recycle plastic that it's the best solution. As much as possible, if we can prevent waste at all, that's the idea behind circular economy. So it's kind of based on nature. It's like everything should be a virtuous circle and like avoid, really closing the loop. That's what we talk a lot about circular economy. So I hope I was clear to set up the scene. It's not as complicated as it sounds. It's really about really rethinking a little bit our economy and going beyond the stereotypes behind that. Like sustainability is expensive, it's not accessible. Actually, throughout circular economy, a lot of business can also save money, and that's what is a little bit still hard for people to, believe. And that's why it's also there's a lot of roadblocks on the way for circular economy, but we see a lot of momentum to make it happen in the Philippines and in Europe and in a lot of other countries. So that's why we are very interested here to support the country in the Philippines to implement that.
Cool. And I read a lot of this is very much aligned with the Innovative Startup Act. So when you're making these grants available for startup enablers, it's very much along the same kind of direction and push that the government is doing in order to set up more of these startup enabler groups in the Philippines. Like, for example, we've been through the program of Batangas State University. We've also interviewed Launch Garage on here, New Energy Nexus. So they're all examples of entrepreneur support organizations. How is your program, like, what are they applying for when they do this? Like, I know it's a grant, but like, what's the criteria? What are you really looking for? What's the ideal project or submission you'd be receiving?
So thanks for asking that. So basically, to design the grant, first of all, I want to really emphasize that this was really a collaborative process with also the local context. I think it's important to say that because there's a lot of grants that don't match beneficiary needs. So here we have like different consultations. So here what we are looking at it with DTI, our partner, and DOST for this grant. The idea was to help the helpers. So basically looking at the accelerators, the incubators in the country, which are trying to help startups and to see how we could help them grow the number of programs they have when it comes to eco businesses in the Philippines. Because right now, a lot of them are like tech oriented, and tech can be also part of the enabling technologies for circular economy. It doesn't mean it's outside of the scope, but really having incubation programs that are tackling circular economy in the country, in the Philippines, for now are quite rare. And so what we want to bring to those startup enablers, as we say, is not only technical assistance, but also financial assistance so that they can better support startups in the Philippines.
And these would be startups whose primary objective is to do something that is like qualifies as circular economies, or because every company has some kind of impact. If you have existing companies that would be trying to adopt circular economies sorts of projects or innovate in ways that hasn't really been seen before in the Philippines, how would you respond to those kinds of issues?
Right now for the incubation programs, the main focus would be really innovation in circular economy for the Philippines. So companies that are focusing on that, it could be, for example, alternatives to plastics, but not only, like anything that really gather and tackle circular economy for the Philippines. We have a lot of different types of activities that the incubators can support. So they could really support like business models, for example, for startups, and how they can, in their business models, incorporate really circular economy as a own. But a lot of other type of project can be eligible. So, for example, like really also on reaching product market fit, advocacy support, HR support, addressing also all the legal and regulatory stuff, like bringing guidance for business, how to become like a green businesses in the Philippines, basically. So all those types of assistance that can be brought to startups in the Philippines.
And they'll talk about startups going through different phases like ideation and then like product market fit, like you said, scale up. If a particular startup group wants to launch a program that's tackling any of those stages, you're potentially interested.
Exactly, yeah. It's one of the first grants really like completely focused on circular economy for the Philippines and under this project. So there's still like a flexible side of it because of course we want to see and increase the interest. So it's not really for this goal. It's not like limiting to a type of waste or a type of hours from the 10 hours I listed. It's still quite open to make sure we have also a lot of good applications and interest there.
Okay, and so circular economies often involves material flow, right? Like that's a big part of it. And I mean the classical example of a startup will be like a software company that actually doesn't own anything. Like they don't have assets. They develop software and that sort of thing. But the real meat of the circular economy being in those material flows, like for example, we had Next to Fly was one of the groups in the cohort with me. They are doing black soldier flies on banana waste down in Mindanao. So that's clear, but it's not necessarily what a lot of people would call a startup, or it's not what they would think about in the first instance. How do you think about that? What qualifies a startup? Do you have a specific definition you're working with, or?
Well, there is a definition in the Philippines actually. Okay. So there is a different type of stages identified from the early stage to the mature stage. Us, we are a bit tackling the one in the middle that are stuck in the middle. That's why we call the grant Green Up to Scale Up. The idea is really to support the commercialization of those startups in the Philippines. So, right, the one that are not too like prototyping idea stage, and not the one that are too mature also, because we see that actually a RISE Plus project, also is a DTI project, and in a lot of also analysis in the Philippines, the startups that are in the middle, the one to scale up, are usually the one that have still a lot of barriers and roadblocks in the Philippines. So we are trying to really focus on incubation for those type of stage. But again, our target is startup enablers. So the incubators that will be getting the grant will also have to scout and research what kind of startup they want to support. Expertise France, we are here to really enable the ecosystem, but incubators, the beneficiaries, also know best the startups they want to help in the Philippines and the one they are that fits best the DNA of those entities.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why we are not really like having like really detailed and strict criteria for what type of startups should be recruited by the incubation program. That's really the idea of like not going directly and supporting startups. It's really looking at the incubators which are already experts with the local context.
Yeah,
and just enabling their gaps basically.
Yeah, they've been running workshops for years. They've been meeting all the people, understanding what they're working on, who's doing what where, and how the progress is coming.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and you also have a mention about inclusive youth, like as a particular criteria. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit, like what you're looking for there?
Yeah, absolutely. So all our activities should be inclusive in general. So inclusive is also a big word.
Yeah.
And here in this context of this project, the idea is to always have a lens on how to be the best inclusive possible when it comes to gender, to youth, or to geographical barriers. So on the youth aspect, also on looking at how we can also promote young entrepreneurship in the Philippines. And making sure, we also advocate because in general, we see that anything that touches circular economy or even waste management on the latter part of circular economy, the youth are always the strongest advocates for that. And, they bring it home and they can also be very good ambassadors and influencers. So for this grant, we really want to push the beneficiaries, the incubators, to also look at that aspect as much as possible. This could be in the incubation projects and also how to include the younger generations. On the genderless as well, it's like more like Gen Z in general, so really including, all intersexuality and aspects of gender. And also here it's to see for marginalized communities in general how those programs can be inclusive. So incubators already do that a lot. I feel, this is something that is a momentum, but for us, we really wanted to re-emphasize it. And on the geographical barrier, just a word on that. The idea for grants as much as possible is that it also helps in the eventuality of, for example, we have a consortium, like I'll explain a little bit later how you can submit the grant, but the idea would be also to address maybe smaller incubators and not only the, international ones as well as potential beneficiaries. So we are also pushing, like, for example, international incubators that are applying to maybe also do a partnership with a smaller, what we call TDI in the Philippines, to make sure that we can also reduce geographical barriers in the country as well. And touch the other, like the province also in the Philippines.
Yeah, the more rural.
Right, not only Manila-based incubators, that's the idea.
I've spent most of my time outside of Manila, so I appreciate that. It's an important objective, but also has a lot of challenges in terms of logistics and it just the exposure that the students that have had, the people that are wanting to get into these programs, and like building the skills and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, it's 7,000 plus islands, and all of them are lovely. And it's like, how do we reach people? Even to launch our grant, we are considering to do different roadshows in the province, in different big cities, so also we can promote it. The idea behind every activities we do in general is to be as much as possible inclusive and to reduce all of those gaps.
Yeah, good. And I noticed you have a comment about foreign organizations. There is the potential for foreign organizations to participate in this within the framework of being partnered with a local organization. And I think this here you're talking about startups. are eligible as third parties on the program.
Right.
If I understand that.
Yeah, perfect. So basically, the idea is that a registered entity in the Philippines must be the lead applicant. So it can be an international based incubator, but that has an entity in the Philippines. If it's a foreign organization that has no entity at all in the Philippines, they cannot be lead applicants. They can eventually be what we call a partner, which would be a partnership with a lead applicant locally based and to submit an application. For the startups, we precise as a third party because it's always the misunderstanding with our grants. So we are not, us Expertise France, directly giving funds in this activity to startups. The startups will have to be recruited by the lead applicant, which is an incubator. What can the incubator do for the startups through the grant we will give him? Basically, they can give technical assistance. So I mentioned all of the different type of assistance, mentorship, etc. Also raising awareness on circular economy, etc. But they can and they should also give financial assistance to the startups. So the maximum seed capital that can be given by the incubator by a startup is around 40,000 euros. That's the max. And
to a single company.
For one single company. So it's really seed capital. And that will be the incubator giving it to the selected startup. Us, Expertise France, what do we give to the incubators? So basically, they can submit a request of a grant between 200,000 euros to 500,000 euros. They have to co-finance it from 10% to 49%. And the project, the incubation, should last from 18 months to 24 months. Why? It's because a lot of startups are a little bit suffering that the incubations are usually 6 months to 1 year. So the idea with this project was to have something a little bit more long for the incubators to do and really push them and promote startups.
Yeah, that's been my experience also. Like we got our Hong Kong Science and Technology Park incubation program first, which ended up being 1 year and then 2 years, so 3 years in total that we were at Science Park. Whereas with BSU and Nexus, they were both like one was 3 months, one was 6 months. So quite a bit shorter compared to the kind of programs that like a place like Hong Kong's running, which you definitely feel the effect of.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I mean you're trying to move fast, but at the same time, especially when people are still like the startup scene, the startup culture is still kind of finding its legs in the Philippines. So I think that that exposure time does make a difference.
Yeah, and it's really thanks to like feedbacks like yours also and other people who join our consultations when we design the grant during our Green Devu and our In Green consultations that help us design. So we really try as much as possible to design it with the needs locally, looking at the ecosystem.
So the applicant, in terms of their co-financing, they like when you start talking about third parties, third parties could be kind of participating in the co-financing that the applicant's doing. Is that
no, it's really the incubator itself has to prove that they are co-financing the project. So it's also pushing them to have ownership in the programs. Third parties, they will come really later on. So first we are doing an application. Actually, I can give you quickly the stages.
Okay.
So there will be 3 stages. The first one will be the evaluation of concept notes that will have to be submitted. This is a bit of like a yes or no, like did you submit on time? Are you locally entity? Like really the basis of eligibility.
Yeah.
That will last 1 month, starting from the published date to the month after that. And then we will have an evaluation of the full application. So here, the pre-selected startups will really have to submit a full application with more justification, like preliminary budgets, like a more detailed offer of the programs and incubations. And after that, After that, there will be pitch events with DTI and DOST and us as jury, where we will be looking and selecting the final beneficiaries. All of this will be lasting in the next few months, around June, July, for the final pitch days. And the idea after will be to, of course, set up all the budgets with incubators, the ones that we are selected, and those ones can, after that, hopefully in September, kick off their program, select the third party, so the startups that will be under the incubation program. So this will be happening more at the end of the year.
Great. And you mentioned a green pledge. Gets into kind of the principles that you're hoping that the applicants will be following, the principles that they'll be operating under. You mentioned about social inequalities, decent green job opportunities, trying to combat the potential for greenwashing, and then transparency and disclosures. So how does that play out? Like, is it's a pledge that you sign? It's like...
Yes. Yeah, so... Why is the green pledge? You have those grants guidelines. They're like very big, very massive, right? But we wanted to add a commitment behind that grant, and this is where the green pledge became very important. Here, the green pledge really serves as like the overarching principles and the backbone values of the implementation of this grant. And what we really, as you said, we wanted to avoid greenwashing or programs that will not take into consideration social inequalities. We really also wanted to push like eco businesses to promote green jobs opportunities and like create like decent jobs in general. So actually in the Philippines there are already in several different laws like some principles there. And so what we did was a collaborative effort with the government to design that green pledge, to also gather like a certain standards where we would like incubators to commit to be aligned with these grants. If there were like principles that were missing, just because circular economy is also a new thing, the exercise was also to look at ASEAN and especially the European, because this is a European funded project, list of standards and principles that are being studied and designed over the last 10 years, right? So it's a bit of a mix of like the local also requirements, but also like with an international perspective on circular economy, to really like set a basis of a commitment where we all align that we are part of this. And this is a document to be signed. It's an annex to the grant. Like if you want to have the grant, you need to sign that document. So that's a sign of commitment. It's part of the deal.
Fair enough. And we'll be able to update, so you can keep an eye on like the different updates on social media. We're going to be updating our page as well. But just as a rough timeline, this is your information, your promotion is going to be during the month of April. You're going to be going to a number of cities, and then very early May is when you're expecting the concept notes to be. Correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And that's subject to change, but tentatively right now it's May 2nd would be the concept notes.
Yes, eventually. Yeah.
And so there's going to be an FAQ. We can link to that on the page. And do you want to do this call to action verbatim, or how do you want to do that?
Sure. Yes, I can do it. No worries. Let me do it.
Sure. We'll tee you up.
Okay. I hope I'll be great for this one.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Give it some gusto.
Okay, let's go. So we invite all entrepreneurial support organizations or startup enablers working with circular and green businesses and startups to apply for Green Up to Scale Up. Strengthen your capacities as support organizations through the grant and drive the ecosystem forward in supporting more circular and green businesses innovations. Take part in rebuilding a Philippine economy that works for all people and our planet. Thank you so much, Al.
Adios.
Merci beaucoup.
Cool. And so we got a few minutes left.
Sure.
Perhaps just a little bit more about the different players involved.
Yeah.
And like the PPPs, for example, because it's not technically part of the call for proposals, but it is the broader plan and the 5 years that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the other stakeholders, the project seems complex, but also if you want to do a systemic change, you also need to tackle different policy, different municipalities. You have to involve everybody. Like it's like community, private sector. Otherwise, there's no change at all, right? And the idea of this project is really trying to tackle the different levels. So as I was mentioning, for the policy side, GIZ, the German agency, with DNR will build a circular economy framework to really set like a framework for the Philippine context and government, and so that will be also one of the big outcomes. And then they will also create a platform online for a circular economy, for the green economy project. So that is something that people can keep on mind, because this is where a lot of things will be posted in the future. This kind of grants, for example, but also a lot of information like tackling also business to business matching, and really connecting like everyone in the circular economy. And for UNDP, they are doing also a tremendous work with LGUs, with DILG. So there was a selection of LGUs. The total at the end of the project should be 60. Right now, there are like 20 identified already. Some in Metro Manila, but a lot also outside Manila, which is also great for inclusivity. And there will be also a lot of grants. So grants for community, for academies. They will also, some of them more small, but can also support the private sector of those LGUs, which will be carried by the LGU. So the idea for them is really to enhance like the practice of the municipality, again, because it's something to tackle as a community with local ordinances. So that's really great. And to private sector, well, this grant is one thing, but again, we have a lot of other activities. The PPPs, so the public-private partnerships, are one of the big ambition also of this project. Solid waste management is something that has to be tackled from municipalities and even a cluster of municipalities. And I know you're from Batangas, and I know Batangas did a lot of efforts actually. But definitely solid waste management is one of the really, really pressing issues in the Philippines. And what we hope to do is to identify some LGUs that are really ready to commit in a PPP. So PPP are like a financing contract between the public and the private sector. And they could provide, the LGUs usually for those kind of contracts, what is difficult for them is the financing part, like really the investment part. But they can also, in those kind of setup for solid waste management, participate and share the risk by concessioning a land, for example,
Sure.
or engaging themselves to do a collection and bringing the waste to the facility led by the private sector. So the idea is really like sharing the risk together with the private sector to tackle solid waste management, which right now is kind of fragmented between a municipality, a barangay, informal waste worker, private sector contractors.
Yeah, it's something that you just take the problem away, and so it kind of lands on somebody's plate, and then it's not necessarily a process that's well streamlined and which it doesn't always lead to the best outcomes for
exactly.
You don't always get the investment.
So the best right now in the country is really at least the waste reaching the landfills.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is like landfills are full right now, so a lot of them are closing, a lot of them are reaching maximum volume, so it's really pressing, and there's no other ways right now for management. So the rest is like leaked, like illegal dump sites. Lots of them are in the rivers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very tricky topic.
So when it comes to like technologies like gasification versus incineration and those sorts of things, I know that Edmonton had quite a cutting edge, like plastic and all the carbonaceous materials into biodiesel. Like, are you looking at those sorts of PPPs, like for those sorts of facilities, or what do you have like a scope for that really, or?
So right at the moment, we really notice a very strong interest in the Philippines for waste to energy in general.
Okay.
The thing is that all the technologies for waste to energies, or in general technologies, comes with pros and cons. And so, of course, waste to energy seems very interesting for the Philippine government because there is not only a problem of waste but also a problem of energy. So it's like solving two at once. But yeah, the idea with this project is also to address some recommendations on what are the technologies that can bring also difficulties for the local context, because not everything is appropriated. So right now we don't have like a very list of exclusions of technologies, us as Expertise France. But the idea is really is to first like also look at where the private sector also could be interesting to come in, and where is fitting the type of waste for an LGUs. So mostly right now, waste usually are like percent agri waste, and the rest are like residual, sorry, and plastics and all that. But it depends also on the LGUs. If it's like an LGU more focused on agri, so the technologies have to match also the type of LGUs that wants to commit.
Sure.
I would say, but yeah, so that's right now we are really launching. So this is really hands in hands with the PPP Center.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of NEDA, so it's a Philippine government agency, and they are doing like PPP development in the Philippines. So our assistance is really to them to really create a pipeline of potential projects, and we will be financing 2 to 3 feasibility studies for LGUs. So before the transaction phase with the private sector, to assess actually the technologies, the setup, the type of waste. You know, waste management always sounds very practical and like it's like, oh yeah, you're just dealing with basura basically. But in fact, it's very technical. So when you go deep in it, and that's why it has to be very complex, and waste flows are also very complex, like who collects, how does it work? So, and it's very like a municipality based. So that's all the things that have to be said before a PPP should be signed.
Definitely. And solid waste discharged into water, it sounds like as well, like for example, like the lakes in potential.
Exactly.
In potential. Okay, cool. So do you know what paglalayag means?
No, actually, maybe you can tell me.
So paglalayag means sailing or going on an expedition.
Ah.
So we're into the part now with the quotes, and I told you that
Yes.
I picked out a couple French quotes.
Yeah.
And I picked a couple explorers. You were a little bit less excited about those ones, but so we're gonna start out with Simone de Beauvoir, because I had a philosopher's mind at first, or that's what I thought of when I thought of the French. But I think this is quite a nice one. So why don't you read it? I can't do it justice. Why don't you read?
Should I say it in French?
Read it in French and then explain it, and then we'll get into the second.
Sure. Well, okay. So in French, Simone de Beauvoir said, "Rien n'est jamais définitivement acquis. Il suffira d'une crise politique, économique ou religieuse pour que le droit des femmes soit remis en question. Votre vie durant, vous devez rester vigilante." So this was a message, a feminist message, of course, that was mentioning to women that all the acquired women rights over time, if you look at it, even in France and in any country, is very recent. It's like less than 100 years ago. In France, like 100 years ago, a woman was not allowed to have a bank account. So this is like, in terms of the history, it's really nothing. And so a lot of message from Simone de Beauvoir, but also Simone Weil in France really try to alarm or alert to women to stay vigilant. And vigilant means like alert that their rights can be questioned. And we see it, for example, in other countries that it's happening right now. So yeah, I like that quote because it's just a reminder that this and the environment are like things that are really being, for example, questions also in the US right now, and like those should not be taken for granted. That's a little bit the message behind it.
Sure. Yeah, I only really knew the name Simone de Beauvoir in mentions about Sartre, and I mentioned Sartre.
Yeah,
but then even when I was looking through those quotes, I was like, "This is not so circular economy anyway." This one's better. But then I'm also gonna throw my two were
that's yours.
Picard and Cousteau, but Picard's Swiss, so we'll go with Cousteau. And Cousteau he talks about we forget the water cycle and the life cycle are one. So that was.
No, that's very appropriate for the circular aspect of the cycle. That's great.
Yeah. What would you say, like, in terms of best outcome or something that you would be really, really satisfied as an outcome of this whole project by the end of it? What would you think?
I think for me, what would be really great is to see more transformation in a priority sector. So that's another grant actually we will launch, but it's connected to this one as well. For example, tourism is one of the selected sector for the government, and like plastic waste and organic waste. And what would be really great is to have a group of actors that would work together to transform a sector. So we have this idea that we need to design more in the next few months of doing coalition building. So it would be, for example, a group of a hotel and restaurant association that would be working with a chamber of commerce, or would be having also part of the group a recycler, and also someone that can provide equipment for refilling. And all of this, for example, would help hotels and restaurants to avoid plastic bottles and have refilling systems, like concrete projects that transform, on a certain level, MSMEs in the country. I think that would be great because I kind of really want to kill that stereotype of like circular economy is pricey and not accessible. Actually, it can also make companies save money, and it can be benefitable. So this is something that I wish we can work on, and also of course behavior change in general, like on also how we treat plastics in the country. I think that would be really great if this program can tackle that. But yeah, there's so much like things to do and like outcomes expected. So there's like even like national policies are as important as that. But yeah, for our activities for the private sector, I hope we can have that. And also the PPPs I mentioned, I think it would be huge if like at the end of the projects we have an LGU like signing up with the private sector a project that will engage them in treating their waste on a certain volume. So that would be really cool. But not easy.
Yes, but it's exciting. Like it's a good start. It's something for lots of people to look forward to, and there will be certain groups who will be able to probably take advantage of this and really move what they're working on forward. So it's great to have you here and doing this, and so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
Yeah. The line for the podcast "Tule Tule Lang" means keep going.
Keep going. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining me, and for everybody who's listening, keep an eye out for the social media posts and on the website and everything. And if you got a concept note to submit, then please do during the month of April, and we'll cut her off from there. So take care, everybody. Thanks.
Take care. Thank you, everyone, for listening.